Now, Jake, we'll touch on this one really just quickly, and then I know we're busy people. But one thing that caught my eye this week, obviously, what's that?
You got to drink your coffee.
I've had my coffee from Nook Restaurant. I don't even know where Nook Restaurant is, but
big sponsors of the show.
They are now. I wonder if they'll give me a coffee every week if I say we'll sponsor them on the show. Now, look, this China situation. So I love this because everyone knows exactly what's going on, but no one's willing to admit it. So China's saying that there's no funny business going on, and Australia's going, nah, look, we're still really good friends with China. Neither of those things are true at the moment. So very interesting that China claims Australian journalists endangered security hours after others fled. Now, this has to do with Bill Birtles from the ABC correspondent, who was based in Beijing, and the Australian Financial Review's Mike Smith all of a sudden magically appeared in Australia, on Australian soil, and we're very chuffed about that. This comes on the back of...
We're not so chuffed.
I suppose like they've just lost their jobs, right?
It's the first time in almost 20 years that we haven't had a foreign correspondent. First time since the mid-1970s that we haven't had accredited Australian media journalists based in mainland China.
Okay, so why did they flee?
Well, it's really interesting. They were warned by the by DFAT, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and by the consulate that they were in trouble and that they should get out as not so much that they were in trouble, but that activities that they do, i.e., reporting on truth, may not be particularly advantageous for their existence as human beings who breathe and live. So essentially, they were warned and they decided that they were going to get out of Dodge essentially as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
now,
why wouldn't you?
Exactly. And they were having Friday night drinks together as a group, and they got a knock on the door. And the knock on the door was from Chinese officials who said, we need you to come in and have a chat about a national security issue, to which they said, we're just going to go over here to the consulate.
Just going to go to the bathroom for a second.
Pretty much. They went almost immediately to the consulate, and they for want of a better term, hid out in the consulate. The consular officials negotiated with the Chinese officials on what essentially amounted to, once they had agreed to be interviewed as part of this, national security issue, that they would be allowed to leave China. Because that was essentially what had happened at the end of that, party conversation was, if you don't come and see us, you are not allowed to leave China.
Yeah,
that's what the Chinese officials had said.
That's right. Now, this is off the back of this of another. I think she like an Australian journalist who was working over there,
Chung Lee,
right? So she is actually detained. She's not free at the moment. She's been detained, and no one really understands why. Yeah. So full-blown charges. So really, really scary stuff. And so these two journalists have made a really, really good choice, I think, in getting out of there. I know that Stan Grant, who's a very popular ABC journalist, I think he appears on some other stations as well, he actually has a really interesting history. I think he worked over in China for about 5 years. And he said that, over that time it changed from the fact that they were followed all the time, all that sort of stuff. They sort of had a bit more sort of freedom. No, they never used to have a lot of freedoms, and they got a little bit of freedom, but that came at the cost of being followed all the time, but that if he had the choice, he would actually go back. He would still go back. It's still a fascinating place to be, despite all these risks, despite the fact that they're just detaining journalists for no reason. So really, really interesting. So it was interesting to hear his commentary this week about the fact that what those changes have been and what those experiences are in China, and, the fact that... Just the bullying that's happening. I mean, this bullying doesn't even seem to cut it as a word that is appropriate for this particular situation. It's really China flexing their muscles, and they've got some muscles to flex, unfortunately.
Yeah, they're way bigger muscles than the Australian muscles.
To a certain extent. Hey, I mean, we're slowly trying to wean ourselves off of China, which is obvious. But at the same time, none of our MPs can open up a dialogue with their Chinese counterparts.
Well, exactly.
We don't have reporters over there. The trade is becoming more and more difficult to deal with in China at the moment. We got all the increase in tariffs on wine, on barley, on all these sorts of things. It's tremendously obvious what's going on.
Because we raised questions about the coronavirus.
That's right.
And how it was allowed to proliferate.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting and fascinating subject. Invariably, the Chinese people are in many ways a lot like the Australian people, by and large. They don't take themselves too seriously. They're good-humoured. They're wonderful people. It just seems that the Chinese government is creating a situation that is creating a tremendous amount of tension between the two countries. And,
certainly.
I'm not sure whether we're exacerbating it. I'm not sure what we could do to exacerbate it. But it's one of those things that is scary.
Yeah, well, I think we're exacerbating it by not playing along, right? That's the whole thing. It's we're being very diplomatic in our responses as well. Which may come at the cost of jobs. It may come at the cost of exports and things like that. So very, it's a very nuanced game at the moment, and one that may have an impact on us for many years to come. I think it's one of the interesting outcomes from the coronavirus, really, isn't it? Because, we're not withdrawing. We're not changing our tune about this whole situation, about the investigation that's happening, nor should we. So I think that it's... it's really interesting. I mean, the China-Australia relationship really fascinates me, and it might be time we got in contact with Drew Pavlo again as well. He encouraged us to get in contact with him. He was the university student who ended up getting sort of suspended from his role, for speaking out against China influence on Australian universities. So really, really fascinating stuff. And once you dig deeper, I mean, people accuse Dan Andrews of being in China's pockets. People accuse Australian universities of being in China's pockets. We had the saga a little while ago where MPs, I think it was, were sort of involved in spying charges. I think there was a politician very recently who got investigated with his links to China. So there's really, really fascinating little stories that come up, fascinating in a scary way.
It is a scary thing, and it is one of those things that we need to consider this very carefully. Every step that we take in this particular area, we need to take very cautiously, because every step may come at the expense of Australian, security, as well as Australian trade, Australian prosperity, and various other things.
All right, Jake. Well, I don't know about you. I'm pouched out.
I'm pouched out too.
Whew.